I just first want to thank you, Ms. Dooley, for bringing this to our attention. This is something that I know you had asked all of us to take a look at, individually and discuss before determining whether to bring it up to council tonight. I personally believe there is a time and place for firearms, whether it's a shooting gallery, the range, going hunting. But I don't believe that there's a time and place for guns at our kids' soccer games, or at the pool, or at a funeral. I believe that this resolution will show that we are looking to protect the public from this horrible fate that Virginia Beach found itself in just a few weeks ago, and I will be proud to support this resolution tonight. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Mr. Frye.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Withers. This one here, I want to say this first. I'm an elected official. I'm not a politician. And my personal opinion on what's happening in Richmond right now. Let me say this: the city of Fredericksburg is the model for the gun give back, based on what city attorney just spoke of, that the rules were changed where folks couldn't do buybacks and localities couldn't do buybacks, and because of the rules that they had to be turned in or they had to be resold, let me say. And for folks who are not clear about the gun give back in the city of Fredericksburg, the gun give back it is speaking to a lot of the concerns that that some of you all spoke of tonight, which is loose guns, if I can use that word, or guns that are laying around, or granddad's gun in the shed and granddad passed away, and the kid next door who cuts the grass stumbles across the gun and he has the gun. It's all kinds of scenarios I could throw out there, but that's the logic on the gun give back, and it's a don't ask questions thing that we do in the city of Fredericksburg. So I'm just going to speak to the give back, and the reason for that is, if, say, I'm giving an example. If a kid has a weapon, or an adult has a weapon, and they don't know what to do with it, and they don't really want it. Maybe a buddy gave it to them. Who knows? Maybe they found it, because a lot of times when weapons are used, they're tossed. Everybody knows that. So the idea of the gun give back for the city of Fredericksburg was to get guns, giving people an option to get guns, not necessarily off the street, but out of the hands of the folks that didn't want them, because a lot of people didn't know what to do with guns that were laying around, and some people don't like them. That's their personal preference, that's their opinion. So we have collected over 175 guns in the city of Fredericksburg on a voluntary basis, and I think it addresses what some of the concerns were earlier, like the break-in. For instance, if that guy came in and had a gun, he probably would have used it on you. If my opinion, he would have used it if he just had a loose gun laying around that maybe he had found. But what we're trying to provide as an option to get rid of weapons. So it's all kinds of scenarios. But on that, for the folks who may know that I'm a part of the gun give back, I just wanted to throw that out there to the public. When it comes to might shock some folks, but when it comes to gun rights, it's your right. So I will say that my view on the gun give back is exactly what I just told you. The fact that somebody could use that weapon. So it's not. A lot of people thought, and I'm just going to backtrack a little bit. A lot of people thought when the city did the gun give back, and then I'm glad I'm speaking now so people can speak after me. But when the city did the gun give back, a lot of people came out and protested and so on and so forth, and all kinds of mess went on, and we went to court 2 days before the actual first gun give back, because folks were saying you're not going to take my gun, and that's not what it was. So I hope that folks understand that. But when it comes to, you know, your gun rights and so on and so forth, I don't agree with this one. And Ms. Dooley, sorry I didn't have time to chat with you, you know, about it, because it's let me say about politics, it's a joke. That's why I love local politics. That's why I love sitting here tonight. That's a joke. Even on the quote gun give back, or now they're talking about gun buybacks and all of this stuff. And I have personally reached out to everybody from the governor on down. Myself, personally, I've talked to them face to face. At a union function, you know, when people were lollygagging for money, I just happened to be there because I'm a union member. I'm a Teamster. And after, you know, I had all the direct connects, and I spoke on this about 4 or 5 months ago of how the state never responded. But now you have a shooting in another locality, and now it's a big deal, and it's election year. And I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, I think it's a joke to take something like that and then turn it into, not saying that's what we're doing. This is just what's happening in the world right now. It's happening in Richmond right now. But I think it's a joke for elected officials, and I would call them politicians, to do that, you know, on the backs of a crying mother or a crying wife or a crying husband, you know, to use their story for political gain, and that's the way I feel about it. When it getting down to the roots of what folks think, you're sitting in a room where this city does it. We try to get, not saying we can stop crime or stop a shooter, but as a city, we provided an option to try to help with, and nobody's in Richmond listening. So that's all I wanted to say, and I had to say something about the give back, because we're doing it. We're the only locality to do it, and we went. All the research was done years ago about the gun buyback and the rules of that. But I'm just mainly want to say to whoever is not responding to the little folks in Fredericksburg, I think it's a shame. And, you know, it's like the folks wait on the next crisis and they go to the next area. Because I thought after Virginia Tech, and I thought all of this, I thought all of these things somebody would address it. But, you know, and then all the, you know, when people get together and fill up a room and speak, I hope, you know, the same energy goes to the politicians. Like I say, whoever it is. And, you know, tell them stop it and get to the grassroots of, you know, what can really be done. So, not in support of this. Sorry, it took me 5 minutes to say that. But I'm not in support of it on those reasons. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I want to preface this by saying, if we were all sitting and having coffee right now in a coffee shop, and I were to make the statement that as an employer, I have an obligation to provide a safe workplace for my employees and the people who visit me to do business, there would be no conversation. Throw the word firearms into it, and all of a sudden it's going sideways 4 ways from Sunday. I'm partially in agreement with Councilor Frye in the sense that, to me, this is truly the most biggest, or another example of Richmond copping out of having a discussion that, Richard, you are totally correct, that we really need to have and can't have, because as soon as you mention the word, it goes to 2 extremes and everybody's screaming at each other. We need to be able to have that conversation of rights versus safety and what that means. What the state is basically doing is turning around and saying to us, all right, we have been totally unable to deal with the issue or don't want to deal with the issue, and we're going to throw it down to localities. And here's my biggest concern when it gets to us, to some of the comments that were made about here. We need to provide safety, and I totally agree. So I sent an email to Chief Nye this morning and said, okay, what does this entail for us? What does safety mean at a soccer field, in this building, or whatever else? Right now, all it means is we're going to say you're not allowed to bring a gun in a public place. And we've seen how successful that is. If we're truly talking about safety, now you're talking about, are we going to bring additional officers in here to provide protection? Are we bringing metal detectors in to make sure people don't bring weapons in here? I mean, there's a whole cavalcade of things that come into that. And it's a conversation worth having at some point. I think that is correct. But my biggest issue with the way we deal with gun control, and I do believe there needs to, as an owner of more than one, there does need to be some discussion in here and kind of drawing some lines. I have a right to have my weapons in my house and do my things, and I would tell you, no, you're not going to take them away from me. I do agree that there are certain things that have happened that makes us start thinking about who should be able to own a weapon or whatever else like that, which is the harder issue in all this. And unfortunately for politicians, the thing to do is, let's take the easiest solution we can find, throw it out there, say we've achieved something. So we've created a gun-free zone. We have done something. No, we've not done anything. We can go right now and put a sign on the front of City Hall and say, will you please not bring weapons into City Hall? And it's going to have the same impact as a gun-free zone. If we want the council to have a discussion, that's fine. Right now I can tell you, because another question I asked was whether or not our VML has already taken a position on this. You know, again, I'm trying to figure out, we have always had somewhat of a tradition to try not to go too far outside the boundaries of our local government world and doing what we do, because we have a lot of things to deal with. And we currently have VML's position as weapons in public buildings VML supports legislation allows local governments to restrict carrying weapons in any building where a local governing body meets during the meeting. To the same extent, weapons are prohibited in public schools. VML in general has philosophical support for more local autonomy. So we've got VML, frankly, going there. And ultimately, this isn't our decision. This is the General Assembly's decision. And if they make it, we're going to have to deal with it. And I'm hoping we're going to be able to deal it, as Richard pointed out earlier, in a manner where we can have a good discussion and fully understand what we really need to be doing. I agree with Councilor Frye. This thing kind of came out very quickly as a result of this going into an election cycle, as opposed to being a thought-out proposal. Because again, Chief Nye says, I don't know. What do you want me to do? There's other issues here that come into play in what we do if we make legislation and we give the implication that somebody's protected and they're not, which is another issue we have. And I do agree with the comment made that if you get in a situation where you've got every single jurisdiction in the Commonwealth of Virginia trying to come up with their own laws, rules, and regulations on how they're going to deal with this, you are creating a nightmare. This really does need to be a state conversation in Richmond to come up with the rules and regulations on how to deal with firearms. Frankly, what they're doing, throwing it down to us, they're trying to throw it down to us as a cop-out. They're not doing what we're paying them or voted them in to do. And so, frankly, on the buyback issue, I think Charlie, I had a lot of my friends complaining about Mr. Frye and his gun policy. If I, as a public citizen, decide that I want to sell my weapon to anybody who wants, not anybody who wants it, but to sell it to be destroyed, that's my choice. Why protest that? You're protesting an individual's right to say, you know what, I don't need this gun anymore. I'm going to sell it, or I'm going to get something for it, but I'm going to know it's going to be destroyed. That's a conscious choice. You have a right to do that. I think we do have, as I said in the very beginning, an issue of we do have an obligation to make sure our employees have a safe working environment and that people who do here, the question that we have never even started having a conversation about is, how do you do that? Because frankly, if you look at all the incidents that have occurred, you're right, there are instances where somebody walked in and a lot of people were killed. There were other instances of where if an individual who had a firearm had done his job at a particular time, the numbers probably would have been a lot less. And I'm talking about a police officer, not an individual or anything else like that. But, you know, there's a lot going into this, and this is really just kind of an oversimplification of a very, very difficult problem. And I'm not ready to, if we want to talk about gun control or anything else like that, let's have that conversation. Let's have all aspects of it on the table to discuss. But this, no. I mean, right now you've already got VML doing it. Why we're going to jump into it as a city now and just throw another letter into a situation that's already going to go south, frankly, in Richmond, makes no sense to me. And I don't see why we would basically put the time into responding. Thank you.
Mr. Devine, then Dr. Duffy.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I guess I just want to address the issue that we need to have this discussion. I don't think we get to have this discussion if we don't go down this road. I don't necessarily think it's a cop-out for the state to kind of get feedback from the localities. One of the things we complain about in the state is that it's a Dillon rule state. We don't get to do anything and make any decisions unless the state gives us permission. And this is asking permission. This does not obligate us to anything, but there's discussions that I think we need to have as a community. So I am in favor of it. And I'm in favor of sending this message to the state that, yes, we as a locality would like to be able to make decisions. So for that reason, I will be voting for it.
Dr. Duffy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I want to thank everyone for turning out. I appreciate your comments and your perspective. I am prepared to support the resolution, though. I think, I don't think the right to own firearms is absolute. I think Mr. Kelly's comments were, right on target about having discussions about how we can protect rights and also provide protection for the public. But I think we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, local governments can be laboratories for progress, and I hope that might be what it takes, since the state government seems so powerless to do something. And as Ms. Devine said, we often do complain that the state needs to do these things, and if they can't do it, maybe they need to let us do it. Now, I am not prepared to say today what I would vote for. But I think that I'm certainly supportive of VML's position of exploring these possibilities of finding ways to protect the public and public spaces, and we'll support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Duffy. I'm on the VML Legislative Committee and did support this resolution, VML, and I will support this tonight. I do have concerns. There's no question about it. There's some great points brought up tonight. But this, for me, is simply saying, okay, let's take a look. It's not we're going to do it, but let's look at, see what we can do, and if we decide to do it, how we can do it. So I will support the resolution. Okay, anyone? Mr. Frye.
Not quite doctor yet, Vice Mayor, but thank you. And I will say that my position on today's sending it to Richmond is based on personally reaching out and nobody reaching back. And I think we're right off of exit, right off of 95. we're not hard to find from Richmond. And, so that I'm just putting it out there. That's, on the ground, doing groundwork and reaching out and not hearing any feedback. And now, that's just the way I see it. And if somebody was here from Richmond right now, I would say the same thing. They were standing right here. It's real to me. I'm sitting on Easter Sunday, there was a shooting in my neighborhood at the playground, right here in the city of Fredericksburg. I mean, it's real. And like I said, things have been happening in the city for years. And I'm just saying personally, that's why. That's why. I mean, to reach out, if you would think if you're an elected official, and you reach out and you would get a response. So, it is what it is. No response to this date. So, thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Vice Mayor, move to approve the resolution, the City Council's legislative agenda for the special General Assembly session.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion passes 4-2. Frye and Kelly voting against.